I returned as a ghost, desperate to find a way to care for my child, and then I saw a lion watching over her. I begged him to take her in, to protect her as his own. The lion agreed, and from that day forward, he became her guardian. Mary and Stephen were happily married. They lived in peace and harmony. One day, as they were returning from somewhere, they saw a little girl by the side of the road, alone and looking intently toward the distant forest. She was looking strangely peaceful. Mary had felt her heart soften instantly. "Hello, little girl, are you lost?" she asked, her voice full of concern. The little girl turned to them, her eyes bright and unafraid. "I am trying to go to the forest," she replied simply, pointing to the trees in the distance. Stephen and Mary exchanged a look of surprise. What child would wish to go into a forest feared by all? They assumed she must be disoriented, that she didn't understand the danger. They approached her gently with the intention of taking her back to safety. "Come with us," Mary said, bending down to her level. "We can help you find your family." The girl only tilted her head as though trying to understand. Then, with a serene smile, she said, "I have no family." "And what is your name, little one?" Stephen asked. The girl's brow furrowed. After a moment, she shook her head. "I have no name." A chill ran down Mary's spine, but her heart was already won over. "Then we will call you Ella," she said gently. "Would you like that?" The girl considered this, then nodded. "Ella. Yes, that sounds right." And so Mary and Stephen brought her home, deciding to take her in as their own. From that day, they loved and cared for her as if she were their own daughter. They never questioned her origin, though at times they couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unusual about her. Over the years, this feeling only deepened. As Ella grew, her unusual bond with the forest became evident. She would disappear into the trees for hours, always returning unharmed. The animals, whom others feared, seemed drawn to her. Mary and Stephen, though they worried, learned to trust that the forest itself was watching over her. But little did they know the true history of Ella's birth. As Ella blossomed into a young woman, her beauty was matched only by the air of mystery that surrounded her. Everyone in the village knew of her connection to the forest. None of them truly understood why Ella chose to go to the forest every day, and why the wild animals were friendly to her. Villagers would watch her with surprise as she left. Each morning, disappearing into the forest, no one else dared to enter. In the forest, Ella felt a sense of peace and belonging that was beyond words. The creatures welcomed her with open hearts. Foxes would dart out from the underbrush to greet her. Birds would swoop and sing over her head, and even the wolves, feared by others, would gather close, protective and gentle. They didn't just see her as a visitor. To them, she was their family. One day, as she sat with the animals, a fox spoke to her. "Ella, why do you leave us every day? Why not stay here in the forest? We would keep you safe and you will never have to be lonely." Ella smiled. "Oh, sweet one, I would love to stay with you all, but I am not like you. I am a human, and I have a family who loves and cares for me. They would miss me terribly." A lion resting beside. "But Ella, we are your family too. The forest is your home. It's where you belong." Ella looked at the lion with affection, placing her hand on his head. "And I love each of you with all my heart. But my parents, my human family, raised me. They gave me a name, a home. They would worry if I didn't return." A chorus of sighs rose from the animals around her, a blend of sadness and acceptance. They knew she spoke the truth, yet they couldn't help but long for her to stay. One evening, as the sky turned golden and Ella prepared to leave, the wolf approached her, his voice gentle. "Ella, the forest chose you long ago. But perhaps It was also meant to give you to the human world, to love them as you love us." Ella smiled, her voice filled with gratitude. "Yes, my human family taught me so much. They taught me kindness, patience, and the power of love. I love them, and I also love all." The wolf nodded with understanding. "Then we will wait for you, Ella. The forest will always be your second home, and we will always welcome you back," said the wolf. With a heart full of gratitude, Ella embraced each of her forest friends. She knew she would always belong to both worlds, a guardian of the forest, but a daughter of the village. And though the animals begged her to stay, she would always smile, gently say her goodbyes, and promise to return. As she walked back to her village, the sun dipping below the trees, the villagers watched her return, murmuring their wonder and admiration. They sensed that there was more to Ella than they would ever truly understand, but they loved her all the same. And so Ella lived between two worlds, a bridge between human hearts and the wild, forever tied to both, yet belonging to neither completely. Each day, Mary and Stephen's worry deepened. They loved Ella so much and wanted to protect her, but the forest's mysterious pull seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. No matter how often they asked her to stay away from the forest, Ella's gentle smile and patient reassurance always ended in the same response: "I am safe there. The forest is my home, and the wild animals are my friends." But her parents were afraid of the forest. They had heard stories of wild animals and strange occurrences in its depths, and they feared that one day their daughter might not return. One morning, as Mary was kneeling beside her bed, her hands folded tightly in prayer, her eyes shut tightly as she whispered a prayer. "Oh Lord," she whispered, her voice trembling, "please keep my daughter safe. Give her the strength to stay with us. Please help her to leave the forest behind." Tears welled up in Mary's eyes as she continued to pray, her heart aching with the desperation only a mother could feel. Suddenly, a strange chill filled the room. Mary opened her eyes, startled, and saw a faint glow forming in front of her. The shape of a woman appeared, her presence gentle, yet powerful. Mary's heart pounded in fear. The woman spoke softly, her voice calm and comforting. "Don't be afraid, Mary. I come in peace. My name is Dorothy. I am Ella's biological mother." Mary stared in shock, struggling to comprehend. She had always wondered about Ella's origin, but never had she expected an encounter like this. She remained silent, waiting as Dorothy continued. "I am here to tell you the story behind Ella's birth, a truth long buried," Dorothy said, her voice tinged with sadness. She looked down, as though recalling memories that were both precious and painful. She began, "Many years ago, I was married to a kind and noble man, Ella's father. But our happiness was shadowed by his elder brother, who harbored jealousy and resentment toward my husband. He wished to have what my husband had, including me. He approached me, asking me to betray my husband and sleep with him. But I refused. I told him that my body belonged to my husband alone. He was enraged that I loved my husband deeply and refused his advances. I rejected him time and again, making it clear that my loyalty belonged to my husband alone, but his heart was darkened by hatred. One day he devised a cruel plan, a twisted plot to get rid of my husband. He invited my husband for a drink under the guise of siblings' love. But the drink was poisoned. My poor husband had no idea of his brother's treachery. He returned home, weakened and in agony. I barely had time to realize what was happening before he collapsed, clutching his stomach, and died. When my husband died, his family turned against me. They blamed me, accused me of being the cause of his death. They couldn't see the truth that his own brother had poisoned him. In their anger and wickedness, they drove me from our home, banished me to the forest. I was pregnant, alone, and terrified. I wandered into the forest, feeling as if the world had abandoned me. I cried out to God and to the spirits who watch over the forest, pleading that, even if I would die there, they would help me bring my child safely into the world. I knew I wouldn't live to raise her, but I hoped, prayed, that somehow my child would be protected. That night I fell into a restless sleep beneath the trees. When I woke up in the morning, I was still alive, but soon the pains of labor began. Alone in the forest, I screamed for help, but no one came. And yet, against all odds, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. I was weak, but I held her close and called upon the spirits of the forest. I begged them to protect my child, to give her the strength I knew I could not give her myself. I asked them to guide her, to shield her from harm. I made them promise to keep her safe. And then I passed from this world. But my spirit could not rest. I could not leave her alone. I returned as a ghost, desperate to find a way to care for my child, and then I saw a lion watching over her. I begged him to take her in, to protect her as his own. The lion agreed, and from that day forward, he became her guardian. And in time, all the animals of the forest grew to love her, to care for her. They raised her as one of their own. Mary felt a deep reverence for the woman before her. She could hardly believe the courage and strength that Dorothy had shown, even after death. When Ella grew into a young girl, I knew she needed more than the forest could give her. She needed a human family, a home where she would be loved and cherished. So I led her to the edge of the forest, to the road. I waited for someone kind and loving to find her. And that day, you and your husband came. You not only took her in, but you loved her as your own. You gave her a name and a family. You gave her a place to belong. For that, Mary, I am eternally grateful. Mary felt a deep warmth in her heart, both humbled and honored. She understood now why Ella was so special, why she felt a connection to the forest that was mysterious. But there is one more thing I want you to do for me. Mary was surprised and asked, "What is it that you want me to do for you?" Dorothy continued, "I want you to go to my husband's village, to prove my innocence. My husband's brother, who caused my pains, was dead few days after my banishment, but I still want them to know that I was innocent. This is the only solution that will disconnect Ella from the forest, when she know the truth of her birth, and where she come from." With that, she vanished into the shadows. Dorothy's request echoed in Mary's mind. She needed to prove Dorothy's innocence. Only then would Ella's connection to the forest be broken, and she could live fully as part of the family. When Stephen returned home, Mary told him everything, her voice trembling as she recounted Dorothy's tragic story. Stephen listened intently, his face shifting from shock to sorrow and finally to determination. "If this is the way to free Ella from the forest," he said, "then we must honor Dorothy's wish. Ella deserves to know her true past." The next morning, they set out on the journey to Ella's paternal village, a place they had never thought they would visit. Ella was puzzled by the sudden trip, but Mary and Stephen reassured her gently. As they traveled, Mary couldn't help but wonder what kind of reaction they would receive, and whether the truth would be enough to heal the old wounds Dorothy had left behind. When they arrived at the village, whispers spread quickly, and soon a crowd had gathered. Mary and Stephen shared Dorothy's story, sparing no detail, and finally introduced Ella as the daughter of Dorothy, the child who had been banished with her mother years ago. The villagers' faces showed a mixture of shock, guilt, and remorse. They had always believed Dorothy to be guilty, but hearing the truth, the jealousy and betrayal, Dorothy's final act of love, left them speechless. As the story sank in, a quiet murmur spread through the crowd, and many began to weep. An elder finally spoke, his voice heavy with regret. "We wronged Dorothy deeply. We banished an innocent woman and her unborn child. Our judgment was harsh, and we cannot undo the pain we caused." Another villager stepped forward, looking at Ella with remorseful eyes. "Ella," he said softly, "please forgive us. We were wrong, and we carry this guilt with us. Your mother's spirit has longed for peace, and we wish to honor her memory. Can you forgive us?" Ella's eyes, wide and thoughtful, looked at the villagers for a long moment. Finally, she nodded, her expression gentle, yet firm. "I forgive you," she said quietly. "I know my mother's pain was great, but her love for me was stronger. I hope her spirit can now find peace." The villagers bowed their heads in gratitude, humbled by Ella's words. Though they asked her to stay to live among them as part of them, Ella shook her head. Her heart belonged with Mary and Stephen, who had raised her, loved her, and given her a home. After saying their goodbyes, Mary, Stephen, and Ella began the journey back. As they left, a strange feeling lifted from Ella, as if a quiet longing had finally been satisfied. When they returned home, Ella felt complete. A part of her past had been healed, and she no longer felt the forest's pull. From that day forward, she stayed with her family, content and at peace, and they lived happily together.